bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready? Right.
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Let's go. Go.
And a good morning, Birds fans. Time for a post-game edition of Birds 365 with your boys, Mac and Mac, John McMullen, and Jody McDonald. A nail-biting, hang on the edge of your seat, 18-18 tie with the Cleveland Browns last night, Johnny Mac. My wife needed to strap me down. I was so excited watching last night's 18-18 tie. You getting that same response down at the link last night from the Eagle Nation?
It was torture. I'm sure some people enjoyed it. I can't explain that. I mean, from the Eagles' perspective, 6 injuries. So, that's all that matters to them. They don't care about wins, losses, draws, anything. Get out there as healthy as possible. And they were not able to accomplish that yesterday. So that's the big number, 6. Some more, obviously, serious than others. Nolan Smith, Olamide Zacchaeus are fine. Those aren't serious. They could be, a day, a week, whatever, but nothing serious. And I'm hopeful. The 2 scariest ones were Tyree Cleveland, Moro Ojomo. People are much more cautious this day with head and neck injuries. Both were moving their extremities. So you can rule the worst out, and you have to see how long that's going to take. Zach McPherson, though, that looks significant, very similar to last week in Baltimore with Sean Bradley. And those might be your 2 best special teams players on the entire team. So that's a bigger deal than I think a lot of people realize, because Zach can do many things. And he saw it last night. He moved back outside. He was playing outside corner. He spent basically the entire spring and summer moving to the slot. So you could see they're trying to make him their top backup corner as a whole. Again, best gunner they have on punt coverage. He was returning punts again. Just can do a lot of things, and a very valuable player, especially on a game day, because of your ability to do all those things in a pinch. And I did not like the way that went, and we'll see. And then Josh Andrews, which I didn't see, to be honest, when Josh Andrews got hurt. But boy, they ruled him out quickly, Jody, and that's never a good sign either. So that's
because they didn't have a good shot of it on TV either.
Yeah, I didn't even, but they ruled him out very quickly, and that is generally not a positive sign. So that's the biggest news. The game stuff is, I guess, from a game perspective, I mean, not good for Marcus Mariota. As the backup quarterback, just flat out. I don't know how you spin it in a positive fashion. Not good. I was concerned about that pretty much from day one. I just don't think he's a very good NFL quarterback at this stage of his career. And I think a lot of people saw the name and what he was coming out of college and do the deal and thought that was an upgrade over the situation from last year. And I didn't think so. And I'm leaning more in that direction. It's not an upgrade. But it's got to get better because those who want a backup quarterback controversy, as impressive as Tanner McKee was last night, Nick Sirianni shut that down immediately when that was brought up. And the context of preseason football is just lost on most fans. It's lost. I mean, it's the context matters. What you're doing against the players matters. What they're playing matters. And Nick was trying to get that across. And, good and bad, by the way. Temper, I mentioned last week with Eli Ricks against four-string players, fourth-string quarterback telegraphing a throw.
Well, then let me jump in here, John, because you and I heard that differently last night. He didn't say there's a debate. He said it's early. He didn't say there is no controversy. He didn't say Marcus Mariota will be our backup quarterback all year. He said it's early. Marcus is our backup for now. He didn't completely quash it. He put it in its proper perspective, as you just said. I'll give you that, but he didn't exactly quash it. And oh, by the way, perspective. How great was the Cleveland Brown defense that Marcus Mariota was facing in the first half?
No, he was terrible. I said that from the start. There's no spin in a positive direction for Marcus Mariota. There's nothing you can spin in a positive direction.
Right, but you said that you got to keep the comparison between what the third string or fourth string, now third string, moving with a bullet up to second string quarterback did in the second half as compared to the first half. Do you really know the difference between the defenses, the level of talent of play that the Browns defense gave in the first half as compared to the second half? Their third teamers as compared to their second teamers? I'll take the Browns guy's word for it, but I don't know that it was like Marcus Mariota was playing against the Browns starters. The Browns didn't play any of their starters either, same as the Eagles.
No, they're again. For the third time, there is no way to spin anything Marcus Mariota did in a positive direction. None. And that's why I said both good and bad with the preseason. Bad is much worse than good, obviously. It's always, anytime you want to step on the field, you want to play in a positive fashion. And that's all Tanner McKee can do, and he's been doing it. But that's kind of my point. I think if you look at it just from a framework of everything's the same, well, Tanner McKee is clearly better. If you look at it from these 2 weeks, nothing else, you knew nothing. You just saw those two players in a vacuum and everything was the same. Tanner McKee's better. And the Eagles don't believe that. Are they right? Maybe they're wrong. Your guy, Brock Purdy in San Francisco, we always bet they didn't want to play him. They didn't want to play him. They played him because they were forced to play him because of injuries. And he turned out to be better than anybody else they had. Maybe the same thing happens with Tanner McKee. All I'm trying to tell fans is the Eagles are going to default to the veteran experience and all the games that Marcus Mariota has played and won in this league. And maybe it's the wrong decision because it looks to me like he can't play anymore, to be honest. So I'm not saying it's the right decision, but I'm saying they're not even entertaining Tanner McKee as the backup quarterback. That's all I'm trying to say.
All right. So let me ask you to evaluate the Eagles again. 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, the opening of camp, mid-camp, whatever, before they played either of the two preseason games they've now played or any of the joint practices. The divide between, we here on Birds 365 weren't even ready to put Tanner McKee ahead of Ian Book, that we thought they were on equal footing at the opening of camp, made the best man win. Well, the best man is certainly pulled out front, and the Eagles kind of tipped their hand big time by not even putting Ian Book into the game last night. talk about a guy whose roster spot is gone. That would be in book. But 3 weeks ago, the divide was this. Would you agree that the divide is this now? Still with Mariota in the lead because of experience, because of the fact that he's been in the league for 9 years and Tanner McKee is a wet behind the ear rookie. You got to at least acknowledge that he's closed the gap.
Well, he should have. He should.
Do you really believe the Eagles can't see that? That they'd be so blinded by experience in the league that they'd look past the fact that Marcus Mariota has looked bad, not good, bad for 2 weeks now.
Well, here's the thing, Jody. They don't value these games. I mean, I say it all the time. They don't value these games. In practice, like Tanner McKee didn't even get any stinking reps against the Browns. You know, Marcus Mariota, the difference, forget about the joint practices because the third team guys, they don't even get any work whatsoever in the joint practices. And the practices, just normal practices with themselves. The drop off between second team reps and third team reps is enormous. And then you have a developmental period where the third teamers and fourth teamers get some more work the last 10 minutes of practice. But it's enormous. That just the number of reps, and they're not getting them prepared if it's a legitimate competition. And look, I tried to get Nick to go down the route because I asked him, you know, how impressive, basically, to me, the most impressive thing about Tanner McKee as a young quarterback, he gets the football out, he processes quickly.
Yep.
You know, his back foot hits the ground, the ball comes out. I tried to get Nick to go down that route. I said, to me, and I said to the naked eye, to me, it seems like he's ahead of most young quarterbacks. And I didn't even bring up Marcus. I was like, you've been around a lot of young quarterbacks. Is he quicker processing than most? And that's an easy question for him to say yes. And he wouldn't even say that. He said, I'm trying to bring it up as we're talking. He said, I think what you're seeing now are the defenses are a little different now preseason than in regular season. Of course, people are going to play more basic and safer. So, and then he said, I would say he gets the ball out consistently, going to the right spot on time. But that caveat, so he's been doing good. To compare him to anybody else based off 2 preseason games, I don't want to go there. I mean, I tried. I didn't even prep because I know
he wasn't going to badmouth Mariota. You were right to form the question the way you did to try and get an answer, and he dodged you.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, everything I see is like, you know, they're getting Mariota prepared to be the backup quarterback. Now, maybe it was so bad and they changes. Anything can change, and maybe Tanner was, because the numbers, by the way, Jody, and I got to look them up. Tanner was 10 of 18.
You know what? I'll throw
4 drops. 4 drops.
Yeah, thank you very much. Exactly what I was going to say. He could have had much better numbers. Guys were dropping balls left and right against him. Mariota's receivers had no chance to catch the ball.
No.
He's skyrocketing them over their heads. McKee was delivering the football on time, on hands, and they were just flat out dropping them.
So, yeah, he should have been 14 of 18, at least, maybe 15, because there was another pass that was a little bit behind, but I think it was, I forget the receiver, but he got both hands on it, and he could have been 15 of 18. But it was a difficult catch, so I didn't count that one. Yeah, he was really good, and it's the same, you know, the quote I just gave you from Nick, it's the same for Marcus, as you pointed out, and he can't, you know, and he's talking about, well, we have to find out what he does well. you might find out he doesn't do anything well because he does run the football. He's still got juice. Yeah, he's still a very good runner, but he is not an accurate passer. And by the way, he never has been.
Let me try and break it down to this. Browns this week in 2 joint practices You said there's the short session at the end that is kind of like, I don't want to say toss away, but less important.
No, not in the joint practices. They don't even do that, a developmental period.
Okay,
That
so the
doesn't
developmental period is out. How many reps did Tanner McKee get in the combined joint practices against the Browns?
0.
Do you think he gets some this week coming up against the Colts? If he got 0 in 2 days against the Browns and he gets at least some against the Colts, that means the needle has been moved. Despite the fact that Nick Sirianni wouldn't answer your question last night, actions speak louder than words.
Oh yeah, no. If he gets it, I was surrounded. Do I think he's going to get them? No, I don't.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I don't like Marcus Mariota a little bit as a backup quarterback, even a little bit. And I've always been in the camp of, most coaches, not all coaches, but most coaches like somebody with veteran experience as a backup quarterback. And I've always been in a category of, you know what? If I know a guy can't play, and most backup quarterbacks can't play, let's be honest. If I know a guy can't play, I'd rather have a young guy with at least some upside. I've always been in that camp.
Yeah, I think it has to do with, and I know you feel this way because you said it about the third tight end position. If you're a Super Bowl team,
yeah, it's a little bit
then
different.
It's tough to really say, yeah, let's get a 6th round draft pick in there for 3 games if our starting quarterback goes down. That's a little risky. Different teams. If you're not going to be a playoff team, damn straight you should have a young guy in there.
Yeah.
The backup's going to come off the bench and lift you from 5 and 12 to 7 and 9. Who the frig cares?
Yeah, if you're a 5-win team, you better damn well play the young guy.
Exactly.
So it is different for a Super Bowl contender. You're right about that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the same thing. If a guy can't play, a guy can't play. Now, hey, maybe Marcus just had a bad day. But, I watched Quarterback on Netflix, and that turned me in a sour direction because he was not, for a couple reasons. One, he wasn't good as a player in Atlanta. And 2, when things got tough, he also had some personal issues. He was having a kid, but, he kind of left. Most quarterbacks don't leave their teams. I don't know. I don't. And people think, it's not that I think Gardner Minshew is a great quarterback. I think he's a good backup. I think that's the best you can do as a backup. Now, in Philadelphia, everybody goes to Nick Foles, and they want Nick Foles back again, because he's out there. That's rare, people. I don't know how many times. I mean, is it that hard to explain? That usually doesn't happen when you go to backup quarterbacks. And I guess it's happening more because we can go to Purdy again, who had the great run as a 3rd-string quarterback originally. So maybe things are changing a little bit in a positive standpoint from backup quarterbacks, but it's usually about getting hot for a little bit of run, and the more you have to play, the more you get exposed. And the hope is obviously that Jalen Hurts plays every game. I mean, that's the hope.
I guess we should have led with that.
Yeah.
Please don't get hurt, Jalen. That's kind of a key for the upcoming season for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We got 2 good guests coming your way. We're going double D on you today. That would be Paul Domwich from 3013.com. He's going to join us in hour number 1. Andrew DeCecco from Inside the Birds, both their podcast and .com, is going to join us a little bit later. So there's no reason for you to go anywhere for the next hour and change. Keep it right here on Birds 365.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys here with you on Birds 365. First stirring 18-18 tie between the Eagles and the Browns last night. Here to break down all the exciting action at Lincoln Financial Field last night is Paul Domwich, who is more exciting with the shirt he's wearing than the entire game was last night. Damo, when did they put the rule in? Was it just last year or a year before that if we get to the end of 60 minutes and
no overtime, baby? Yeah,
no
when did they? I forget when they put that in, Damo, but I'm glad they put it in, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's funny. They were showing the sideline, and I kind of got the sense that some players and coaches weren't quite sure what the rule was.
Oh, no, nobody is. I mean, I try to keep on top of this stuff, but I wasn't sure. I'm like, because even last week I was saying you got to go for two because you don't want to talk. You know, it's ingrained in your mind that you got to go for two. And I'm like, why are they trying to tie this game with a 2-point conversion? That was my admit. I'm like, just kick the extra point at that point and lose 18-17. But yeah, I had forgotten. They
might have been last year, I think.
Yeah. But I'm glad they did. That's a great rule. That might be the best rule change in NFL history. But and the pantheon, and Paul's been around for a while, and the pantheon of preseason games, that's got to be top 5, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh man, that was hard to watch.
Yeah. All right, Emma, we'll let you get in on a conversation John and I are having, and we're not that separated that much. John made it sound like there's no chance, or at least I shouldn't speak for you, John. I apologize, but here's what you sound like.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance.
There's no chance that Tanner McKee will anywhere in the first anytime. Marcus Mariota, to John's opinion, Marcus Mariota is going to have to come in and throw like 8 interceptions in his first game for Tanner McKee to get in there. I think he's closed the gap. I at least think he's moved the needle that Marcus Mariota just doesn't get carte blanche all year for being the backup quarterback. How much of an effect does last night's play, assuming you agree with both me and John, McKee was good, Mariota was awful. How much do you think the needle was actually moved in the minds of the coaching staff as those should be playing if Jalen Hurts suffers an injury?
I think probably a little bit. I mean, I think that his play in both of the first 2 preseason games has given them some pause. I mean, the fact that, you know, they're going to carry 3 quarterbacks doesn't make it as a decision you really have to make right away. I mean, I believe, you know, Marcus Mariota has started 74 games in his career, a lot of them very good. So, they signed him believing that not only does he have a similar skill set to Jalen, but that he's a pretty good player. He just, yesterday was just awful. I mean, there seems to be something wrong with his footwork, mechanics. I mean, everything's high, and that generally means a footwork problem. So somebody needs to work with him pretty quick. Last week, I actually liked what he did last week, not so much from the passing standpoint, but he had 3 runs that kind of showed what he gives them.
He can still run. He can still run.
Now, what confused me yesterday was he seemed to, and maybe he was told this, he seemed determined to stay in the pocket rather than extend plays outside. He could have done that, and I don't think he would have looked nearly as bad because he's not as good a quarterback in the pocket as he is when he gets outside the pocket. So,
I mean, you mentioned those starts, Damo, and he played well, certainly in some of them. And experience matters in this league, especially as a backup quarterback, as Jody pointed out, on a Super Bowl team. But Nick said it's also us finding out what he does well too. Right. You don't have a large enough sample size to figure that out. I mean, and what he does well is what you said. He can still run. He's still got juice. He's never been an accurate quarterback. So, he made the one good RPO throw. If we have to see Marcus Mariota, that's what he does well. All RPOs. Go back to Chip Kelly. RPO, RPO, RPO. Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, well, I guess if he doesn't get any, if we don't see any improvement from Mariota, I'm not real concerned at this point because I think Mariota Mariota had a streak last year, a stretch early on where he was playing pretty well for Atlanta. And then things just kind of went bad. What concerned me, I don't know if you guys watched the show on Netflix, Quarterback, which the comment at the end by Mariota. Clearly, the Eagles were not a team he was had on his list.
No, they weren't. Yeah,
it was just that there was nobody out there that wanted him and was going to give him this opportunity. And so he said, "Okay, I'll go to the East Coast." But that kind of concerned me. But I still think his skill set fits what they want if something happens to Jalen, and I believe that he's a better quarterback than we saw last night. So. I'm not going to push the panic button yet.
All right, Damo, when I got the list of the Eagles that would not be playing last night prior to the game, I shrugged my shoulders, rolled my eyes. I was glad to see that Nakobe Dean was going to play because we debated that yesterday. We thought Nakobe may get injury/deference and not even suit up. He did play, caused the fumble, had a nice game. Give him credit for it. But again, the best players all sitting on the bench, not even dressed. But then the game happens and the Eagles start dropping like flies. And I go, well, I guess they know what they're doing. They don't want to put any of their star players at risk. Just one of those games that there were that many injuries. Is it that big a factor? Maybe it's the fact that they don't practice as hard as that. They actually get in a game and the other team actually hits them and injuries occur, except for the one play where the Eagles injured each other, which wasn't good. How disconcerting is it that in a preseason game that ends in an 18-18 tie, the Eagles actually may pay a price with some significant injuries?
Well, I'm not sure how many of them are significant. I want to see what kind of report we get from them. And actually, we probably won't get a very accurate report since they don't really have to tell us. I'm glad both Cleveland and Ajomo are okay. I mean, it doesn't seem to be serious. The one was Cleveland's was freaky. I mean, he just missed a pass, fell and fell the wrong way. I think the shoulder injuries who had the shoulder injuries?
Nolan and Alameda. They're fine. Yeah, they were fine.
I mean, Smith came right back out there. So did Alameda. So.
I don't think John's worried about Zach Mack.
Yeah, Zach, I think that's significant. And that's unfortunate because I think they might have lost their 2 best special teams players back to back. They lost Sean Bradley in Baltimore,
right?
And I think hopefully it's not season ending, but I think it's going to be pretty significant with Zach McPherson. So, I mean, they weren't good on special teams last year, and they just lost their 2 best special teams players. That's a concern, I think.
Some of those rookies are going to
Johnson got carted off in practice, and he's been out, but he's fine long term. So you never know with these types of things. But it didn't look good. I will say that.
Well, this is why they don't play the starters. I mean, if you're going to have injuries, God forbid, you'd rather them be on the bottom of the roster than the top. So,
yeah, that's the ugly part of the NFL. These guys, and that's why you have all those deference players, and we're the Eagles. Now, before we move on, I just want to rewind back to the quarterback play because you brought up the skill set argument. And a lot of people have brought that up, and that bothers me a little bit, like trying to find somebody who plays like Jalen Hurts. I mean, they're not going to play the way Jalen Hurts does. So what does the style matter? And if that's the case, why is Tanner McKee even here? Why do you draft him? Big 6'6" pocket, traditional, gets the football out quickly, processes quickly. Why is everybody so intent on facing the same style of quarterback? Then Ian Book should, beat out Tanner McKee because he's more of an RPO type quarterback. Yeah. Do you think that's the proper way to do things when it comes to backup quarterbacks, or be a coach and take the best player, even if they have a different skill set?
Yeah. I talked to people this week, football people, about that, and there's 2 directions. I mean, they both, respected people that have 2 different opinions. I mean, one feels, one group of people feels, you want to have somebody with a similar skill set in case the starter gets hurt, so you can run the same offense you've been running and you don't have to pare it down. But there are other people that think, hey, you got a guy that's drastically different like McKee, and you go from Jalen Hurts to McKee, and they haven't practiced for somebody like McKee all season or all week, and Jalen gets hurt. It throws a wrench into the opposing defenses. They're practicing for somebody a style of offense that they didn't expect. So, every way has its pluses. I like the fact that there's so many quarterbacks that can run now in the game. I realize these guys are exposed to injury. We saw what happened to Lamar Jackson the last 2 years. We've seen, Jalen get banged up at the end of the year, but it just provides such a different aspect to your offense. And I think if something does happen to Jalen for a couple of weeks, I still think Marcus gives them the best chance to win without Jalen because of the things he can do.
Damo, after these 2 preseason games, we've got a pretty good read on the Eagles' 3rd team as to whether they can actually stay on an NFL field or not. You can't learn a whole hell of a lot. Have you learned anything through 2 games of the 2 new coordinators the Eagles have? Can you even bother trying to decipher whether Sean Desai is doing a good job, whether they're calling good plays on offense? I really want to know, and I want to try and analyze it, but I don't even know that I can. With guys who aren't going to be on the team. What are we learning about the coordinators off 2 preseason games? Anything?
Yeah, I think John probably has a much better idea about that than I do because he's at practice and sees the coordinators operate in practice, where, especially these joint practices where a lot more is going on. But they're being vanilla in those joint practices as well as the preseason games. So you're not getting a chance to see what they're gonna. That's clearly intentional. It seems to be a bigger deal with Nick than I've ever seen with a coach as far as getting to that game and thinking you're going to be able to surprise teams with what you're doing, which that'll work for a quarter or 2 quarters. Then they kind of figure out what you're doing and. Anyway, so I think both of those guys are pretty good. I've liked Desai because I like Vic Fangio, and he highly recommend. They made the point during the broadcast yesterday that both Brian and Sean, neither of these guys Nick knew before he hired him. Brian came from college. Sean was not a guy that, typically, but that's not quite the case with Sean because, Vic Fangio was around so much last season around this team. He was visiting practices, and I'm sure that his word carried a lot of weight when they were looking for a defensive coordinator, and he recommended Sean. Brian, I thought Brian was a terrific. I knew he was going to be a head coach. He's going to be a head coach of this league eventually. Could have been a head coach in college 2 years ago. Decided to make the leap to the NFL, and I think he'll be excellent as a play caller. And I think he's going to. We've clearly seen the effect he's had on his longtime friend Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, it's so tough to say. And Nick was talking about how vanilla everything is on both sides in the preseason. And, I had a few fans complaining about the 2-point conversion call in Baltimore, which was basically just an awful fade throw to, I think it was Nada from Ian Book. Yeah. Had no chance. And now that I'm saying, what do you want him? You want him to roll out his best 2-point conversion call in preseason in Baltimore? They don't want to show. Now that kind of stuff makes sense to me. You don't want to show that. So yeah, it's tough to get a feel, but I do. And Jody knows, I think Shane Steichen was a hell of a play caller. I really do. I think he was tremendous at it. I think he's got a natural knack for it, an affinity for it. And, Brian himself says it's part, science, part art. There's a feel for it. Like it's Nick's offense, but as I said, we already saw, like Nick's a really good young head coach, but he wasn't a great play caller. Let's be honest. Shane was better at being a play caller. I think Brian's probably going to be in the middle there. I hope he's better than Nick. But I don't know if he's going to be able to be as good as Shane, at least right away. And hell, if the Eagles live up to their promise, he might be one and done. Damo might be right. He might be a head coach next year. That's how quick it can happen from a successful team. But I think he's going to be fine. There's too much talent on that offense to not have success. The defense I'm more concerned with. One, because here's the thing. I have tremendous respect for Vic as well. How could you not? The whole freaking league is playing his offense. I'm being, embellishing a little bit. But that's my concern. Too many people play it. And you know this from the history. Whether it's Tony's cover 2 or Pete Carroll's cover 3, people catch up. When everybody starts copying and so many teams and they see it week after week after week, people catch up. That's my concern. So many teams are playing the same Vic Fangio system. It's going to lose some of its je ne sais quoi, shall we say. It's going to lose some of its and it always happens that way.
Yeah. We've
seen it in history.
Well, I would assume Sean's going to, try to put his own tweaks into it. I like what he's got on the fit. There's some guys I like that I think can be difference makers in this defense. Young guys. Sidney Brown's really impressed me. I liked, Zach Cunningham and Christian Ellis last night looked good. Nakobe Dean, I already think is going to be a terrific player. They're not going to have 70 sacks this year, but it's going to be a pass rush that whether it's 60, 55, or 65, that's going to put fear in the hearts of quarterbacks every time they drop back because they just got waves of people that they can attack with. So, you could say the same thing about the offense, John, and that, defensive coordinators around the league have spent the entire offseason looking at the Eagles offense and looking at Jalen Hurts and trying to figure out how do we stop him. Now, the key there is for the Eagles to know that, which they obviously do, and to have some, they've got to change. They've got to evolve that offense. So whether it's, I don't know, we're going to see there's going to be some differences in that offense this year. I don't know what they are. They'll probably be very slight. But teams are going to try to shut the Eagles down on the outside. Are those two wide receivers going to put up the numbers they did last year? Maybe, maybe not. Teams might say, we're going to do everything we can to shut them down, and we'll take our chances with Dallas Goedert and the running backs. So we'll see.
And again, trying not to read too much into a game that neither team was going all out to win, but you got to try and take something out of it. You mentioned the Eagles are going to be hard pressed to get 70 sacks again this year. Agreed. They got one last night. And I know the starters weren't playing. No Hassan Reddick, no BG. I get all that. One. Didn't stop the Browns from getting six sacks last night. And no Myles Garrett, who is the best maybe in all of football. He wasn't even dressed. Yeah. Eagles offensive line depth. We know they put a lot of resources into it, and that's why Stoutland's here. And getting Stoutland University, they'll make you into a scholar. They didn't look very scholarly for me last night. Is this group one of the lesser Eagle depth groups we've seen in the last several years?
I mean, I think they have some good guys. Josh Sills did not play very well last night, obviously. No. I mean, he was responsible for the safety. He was responsible for the first sack. Josh Sills has had some other things on his mind, so I'm guessing he probably didn't stay in the greatest shape of his life. And it's going to take him a while to get back on track. But, Tyler Steen and Jack Driscoll give them depth. Sua Peta is who he is. So, I mean, they've got to stay healthy there, Jody. I mean, they can't lose 40 games to injury like they did back in 2020. They got to be closer to last year when nobody got hurt, because that offensive line, when the starters are out there, is as good as it gets. And, if those guys are out there, Jalen's going to get protected.
You mentioned a name there, Tomo, and I'm interested because I haven't rewatched the game yet. So, you got, in many ways, you guys have a better view from television. The best defensive player to my eyes last night was Zach Cunningham. Did it come across that way on the broadcast? Because he's been very good since he got here, and even in the joint practices, he's making plays on Deshaun Watson, tipping balls. He's very long. I think they may have found something in Zach Cunningham, because my only concern, he was a very good player in Houston. My only concern was, is he healthy? Did he have anything left? He's a good player. I think they may have fixed linebacker.
I think so too. And because he did look really good last night, John. And so did Christian Ellis, which, that isn't a surprise. He's been pretty good. So, I mean, Nicholas Murrow's probably on the outside looking in now, but they have three, it looks like, and I don't know what the situation is with Miles Jack, but
Miles
they have at least three good linebackers.
Yeah. I think Miles is headed in a negative direction. So I think they took the shot with both of them and say, who's better? And I think we clearly see who's been better. He's got 2 weeks, but if Zach Cunningham keeps playing the way he has the next 2 weeks in practice and joint practice with Indy, he's got to be the starter next to Nakobe Dean. And he was last night, by the way.
Knowing kind of their approach, I mean, they feel that even in the draft, you're going to hit 50-50. I mean, that's good. I think that's why they signed both of those linebackers. They figured we're going to hit on one of them maybe, and the other, I mean, it's only a 1-year deal. We pay whatever it's going to cost to put him on practice squad or wherever he goes.
Last night, Joseph Nada made a couple of catches in the second half when balls were being dropped on Tanner McKee, which I felt bad for. He's throwing great balls, and the guys just aren't coming up with it. Nada caught the balls that went his way. Last week in the preseason game, didn't do much. Hadn't been great in the joint practices. And the day that I was there, Tyree Cleveland was catching everything. And John said, he's been pretty much doing this all camp. Joseph Nada moved back ahead of him. Both undrafted players, not a rookie as compared to Cleveland, who's been around, and assuming Cleveland's injury is not something that's lasting. I think Nada did enough last night to keep himself potentially on the 53. You think the Eagles will go 6 wide receivers?
Yeah, no, I think Nod ends up on the practice squad. I mean, that's the plus of having a 15-man practice squad now. I mean, you can do that with a lot of guys, and they're assuming nobody else claims them. So that's where I think Nod ends up. I mean, he did look good last night, but again, I mean, they were playing the Browns, third team, fourth team guys at that point.
Yeah, it's always tough to gauge. Same thing. Everybody got excited with Eli Ricks. Last night, boy, Calais Ringo did not look good.
No.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
I mean, that one throw was he just did not track the football. And it was an easy pass defense if he just picked it up. Now he's a guy you got to keep on the roster. They're not cutting him. He's got long-term potential, but boy, he did not look ready. So you talk about the Zach McPherson injury from that perspective as well. And Josh Jobe has been playing well. So there's some buffering between, say, Slay and Bradbury and Ringo. But other than Marcus Mariota, it was tough to spin Calais Ringo in a positive fashion. And people want him to change positions. I've heard a lot of people, get him on the field, play him at safety. I'm like, no, please. It's
their
one of those things.
Position guy is really if there's a position that concerns me, it's there because now they don't have McPherson. Ringo plays poorly last night. Darius Slay's 33 now, 32 and change.
32,
I mean, he's at an age where the chance of him playing 17 games this year is minimal. He's going to miss some time. Avonte Maddox is a guy with an injury history, although he's very talented. So, I mean, they need depth at that position. And right now, I'm not sure they have enough of it. So, you asked me earlier, Jody, about the depth at offensive line compared to cornerback right now. It's that's where I feel is a bigger concern.
I liked it on paper, but they're all young, unproven players. But they have a lot of talent. Like that Mekhi Gardner's been good, but he's sort of hasn't. I think Eli Ricks isn't ready, despite the pick 6. But it's better than it has been, Damo, at least from a talent perspective. But they're all unproven, and that's why I think they started cross-training Zach McPherson because he had been working strictly in the slot. Now they have him back outside. But now he's probably going to be out. So, that's a difficult injury.
Those young DBs were getting lit up by Kellen Mond. If we're going to keep things in perspective, who they're playing against, not get too crazy about, because you're doing against the third team. They can't stop Kellen Mond. That's not a good sign.
By the way, remember, somebody brought it up. I wish I remembered. Somebody brought it up. It might have been Jimmy Kempski. I'll give him credit for it. When Chris Sims graded Kellen Mond above Jalen Hurts, which is it's not what you want to lead the resume with as an evaluator.
Yeah, you want a mulligan on that one. All right, Damo, I've got a multiple choice question for you. And last night was, as I predicted, a showcase game for one Derek Barnett. Not only did he start, they sent him out there as a captain before the game started.
Yeah, how about that, by the way? The captains, I forgot to bring that up. That was,
I thought prior to, they're going to try and sell this guy this week. They're going to hope he gets in there, makes a couple plays on national TV, on the NFL Network. Maybe a team gets an injury to a defensive end this week. Howie Roseman puts in the call. He didn't do much last night. So the 3 choices are, Mr. Domwich, Derek Barnett will be here on the roster week 1. Derek Barnett will be traded to another team for a day 3 conditional pick, or Derek Barnett will be, unfortunately for him, given his walking papers, and he's going to have to hit the street and try and find himself a job. Which of those 3 is most likely, Paul Domwich?
Again, I have not seen him in the joint practices or the daily practices, but he didn't, last night he was invisible, but I'm still going to say he'll be on this roster at the end of the preseason.
I would say of that grouping, and Jody's not a big Derek Barnett fan, but the captains last night were Boston Scott, Derek Barnett, and Josh Jobe. If they were trying to showcase him, he only played stinking 10 snaps, so they didn't do a good job showcasing him. So some guys had to play. I'm surprised, Damo, how much they've tried to get him involved. It's like I don't see if everybody's healthy, and already Reddick's hurt. I mean, but they expect him back for week 1.
Right.
If he's back, you have Reddick, you have Sweat, you have BG, you have Nolan Smith, who got banged up. So you could see it as an insurance policy, great insurance policy. But do you really need a fifth edge rusher if everybody's healthy? I don't think you do.
You got the if.
But you said you think they're keeping 10 defensive linemen, John. I would guess that's 5 and 5.
They might keep 11. They're so deep on the defensive front. But what I'm saying is, from the Derek Barnett perspective of trying to move him, they're not cutting him, Jody. But get that out of your head. They are not cutting Derek Barnett. Could they move him? Trade now, and that's why I bring up the showcase part of it. If they're trying to trade him, they're not doing a good job showcasing him because he's in, he's out. He's almost getting deference, but some people have to play, like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis as well. They were in, they played, but they were out really quick. Derek Barnett, same way. So if you're trying to showcase him, you're not doing a very good job, is all I'm trying to say. But he's not getting cut. I mean, forget that. He's not.
You think it's 0%. I don't think it's 0, John.
0.
Cut.
I'm
saying trade different. Yeah.
Another thing to keep in mind, too, is, yes, they have all that depth on their defensive line, but 2 of those guys, BG and Fletcher Cox, are older guys.
Yeah.
Graham is 2 years removed from an Achilles. They don't want to play them a lot. They want to be selective. They want to have them strong in the fourth quarter. And to do that, you've got to be sending out waves the rest of the game. And that's why, I don't see them getting rid of Derek Barnett, because they still feel he has something to give.
I know you've said a couple times you haven't seen the joint practices, and this one is kind of where you'd probably like to be able to say you've seen some action, not preseason games, but we do get to see the preseason games. Trey Sermon last night, really nice run, the nicest run of the entire game. Also coughed the football up at an inopportune time. So he had one in the major plus column, one in the major negative column. Again, I was kind of intrigued by the way Sirianni used his guys. Swift gets deference last night, doesn't carry it at all. Gainwell gets tackled for safety first play and then is in there, but was in the first half and the second half. What do you think the overall offensive thought process is about their running backs with one preseason game to go before it gets underway?
Yeah, I mean, first with Sermon, I mean, he had 2 in the negative column because he also blew a blitz pickup block that gave up a sack.
I think they all blow blitz pickup, Damo. I don't think they have a pass protection.
But he's a big guy that last week stoned somebody on the same kind of play. So, I mean, he's big enough and strong enough that, he's a pretty good blitz pickup guy. I mean, he's going to end up on the practice squad. Maybe somebody will claim him before that. Otherwise, I mean, they like him enough to want to keep him around and develop because of the fact that they don't really have a plethora of power backs. I mean, they have Rashad Penny, who fits that mold, but Rashad Penny's missed 32 games in 3 seasons. So as we look at him and I mean, the guy when he was healthy is last 2 years averaged like 6.5 yards per carry, but when he's healthy, I mean, and so he can go any minute. You just don't know. You look at history and you say he ain't staying healthy. But he was worth the minimal gamble they took to sign him. I mean, a 1-year deal for whatever, I forget, they're paying. So I mean, I like the guy. If Rashad Penny can stay healthy, this run game is going to be brutal. I mean, it's just going to it's just another great weapon to have in RPOs and short yardage and first down. I think they're going to be I love to answer your question, Jody, I love their running back situation. DeAndre Swift was a big pickup. He can catch the ball. We saw that run in the first game. Where he just made people miss. Again, though, he's not a guy. I think he's averaging his career like 9 carries a game. He's a guy you mix and match with the passing game and the run game. Same thing with Gainwell. So it's going to be a running back by committee, but there are no weaknesses in that group. And then you got Boston Scott waiting for 2 games a year against the Giants.
Yeah. And a captain. Yeah, that's what at P Damo. Make sure you follow Paul on Twitter. 33rd Team does a tremendous job writing for Joe Banner's site, and Mike Tannenbaum. So many heavy hitters on the 33rd Team. You should check it out. I see. I'm. Here's what concerns me about running back: the uncertainty. Like, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know who the guy. I want a guy. I want Nick Chubb. That's what I want. People are talking about Nakobe Dean. Great play coming through the line, forced fumble. Guess what? Nick Chubb ain't fumbling that ball. He ain't fumbling that ball. The uncertainty. Like, it could be Gainwell, it could be Swift, it could be Penny. Again, if the Giants show up, it could be Boston Scott. I don't know who it is from week to week. I don't like that uncertainty, Damo.
I like that uncertainty. I think it keeps defenses guessing. I think all of those guys are can play. We've had this discussion before. You don't view them, as you don't see the benefit as much as I do of Swift and Gainwell in the passing game this year. You don't think they'll, I think, running back.
Well, I see them with Swift. They've been trying to get him the football with design plays. I just don't think they're going to dump it off. I don't think Jalen's a dump off guy.
I don't think so either. I think we're going to see. Last year they might have ran in a half a dozen wheel routes the entire season with their running backs. I think this year we're going to see those guys with designed routes. I just think not a dump off so much as on a 3rd and long when he can't find Brown and Devontae Smith. His last resort there, sitting in the middle of the field wide open, is going to be Kenny Gainwell or DeAndre Swift. That's where I think, I think we're going to see him this year. His completion percentage went from 61 to 66 this year. I really think Jalen Hurts could be a 70% completion passer this year because of the addition of Swift and because of the integration of Gainwell in the passing game.
And I hear what John says about wanting a guy, but I'll take Isaiah Pacheco. He was pretty good in that last game of the year last year. Nobody knew who the hell Isaiah Pacheco was in December before the playoffs got underway. Damo, appreciate you jumping in with us. Thanks for staying as long as you did. I will talk to you later, my friend.
That's right. We'll be talking again. And thanks for having me, guys.
Paul Domowitz from the 33rd.
Are you doing Damo's podcast?
No.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
From the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. I got to get out of here in about 40 minutes. I got to do a show on CBS Sports Radio today.
There we go.
And my producer booked Paul Domowitz from the 33rd Team to join me on my CBS Sports Radio show without running it by me first. I never knocked talking to Damo, but I said, well, about an hour and a half in between the two spots.
Well, you got some good reps in, Jody. That's good reps. And now
Damo and I will hit the ground running at 11 o'clock.
You'll be sharper on that second one, unfortunately. But we got the reps down here.
Thank you very much for providing the reps. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We'll come back for hour number 2 here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Jody McDonald and John McMullen, a.k.a. Mac here with you on Birds 365. Thank Damo for jumping in. Andrew DeCecco from Inside the Birds podcast and .com is going to jump in less than 10 minutes from now. All right, we spent an entire hour talking about the Eagles. No great surprise. It's Birds 365. But I got to veer left for just 1 second because your two hosts here are not only football guys, but also wrestling guys. Did they have the game on in the monitors in the press box last night?
Yeah, they had the in-house speed, and I think Grayson Waller was there,
Yes.
Gunther, and Trick Williams. By the way, interesting thing about Trick Williams, who is a young, as they call him, superstar in WWE. He was in Eagles rookie camp years ago.
Really?
He was a wide receiver from South Carolina. His real name is Matrick Belton. And he was in Eagles rookie camp, and he comes back and he's a WWE star. And they've been here all week because ticket sales for WrestleMania, which is at Lincoln Financial Field next April, kicked off this week.
Right. So it's an Eagle broadcast, a.k.a. home of the Eagles, the stadium in which WrestleMania is going to be. Ticket sales go today. I think today is the first day of ticket sales, Friday. Yeah. They've been promoting the snot out of it. Did you see the bump that Dave Spadaro took?
I did not.
Oh, you got to get your hands on the video. Gunther, the Intercontinental Champion, the Ring General, just threw some.
Did he give him a chop? Because those chops from Gunther.
No, he did not chop him. He just grabbed him and threw him. I mean, like not gently laid him on the ground. Took him and threw him to the ground up against the wall.
Well, now I'm going to search for this.
A legitimate bump by Dave Spadaro from Gunther last night during the broadcast on NBC 10.
Yeah, because Gunther is, for those who aren't wrestling fans, is he is good at what he does, and he beats the you know what out of people. So interesting that Dave would put himself in that position.
He did, and to Spadero's further credit, he got up afterwards. No, I don't think he was standing next to him anymore, but he started smack talking that he handled them. He stepped right into the role of WWE star, or in the making. And I was impressed with Dave Spadero. I know we should be talking football, not wrestling, but
Hey, it's football related.
It was actually a pretty good spot, and I got to give Spadero credit for it. I don't know if here's why it was good, John. I don't think it was pre-planned. I think it was just kind of spur of the moment, and Gunther got a little ticked off and threw Spadero to the turf. It was actually, if you get a chance, go back and see it. I didn't know if they'd have it in the on the feed up in the booth, but it certainly was on TV. All right, so today's a day off. What do you got the rest of the week? How often are the Eagles practicing before the?
They're back out at Saturday and Sunday.
Both practices or walkthrough mixed in?
No, both practices. Saturday, Sunday. Monday is a walkthrough. Tuesday is the joint practice with the Colts. Wednesday, walkthrough. Thursday, the game, the final preseason game. And then that's it. So that Tuesday joint practice will be the last time we get to watch the Eagles practice fully, the entire practice. Then we're into regular season mode, where we only get to watch, first 20 minutes of practice before they kick us out. So
that kicks in even for the last week leading up to the season.
Yep. Unfortunately. Not official, but I believe that will be the last one.
Gotcha. And oh, by the way, does the Colts backup quarterback, no questions asked, he's the backup. We may have a small question as to who's the backup here in Philadelphia, but that is not the case in Indianapolis. You think Gardner comes in and just throws the ball all over the line? A very motivated Gardner Minshew. Will he be checking off the plays in these joint practices? So he can show off his arm and say, yeah, you get Mariota over this for me?
I think if he plays, he'll play, maybe a quarter, and they'll go. We're going to see a lot of Sam Ehlinger, I think, from the Colts. But he's got to dress.
No, I'm talking about the joint practice. I'm not talking about the game.
Oh, joint practice. Yeah, he'll be fired up. Yeah. Gardner's always fired up, though.
That's why I'm asking, will he be checking off plays in a joint practice to make sure he can show off his arm?
He'll be, well, I don't know if he wants to show off his arm. That's not the strength of his game, but he'll be excited to make some plays when he makes some plays. And understandably so. I think he's a better back. We'll ask Andrew DeCecco. He's coming up, but who's a better backup quarterback, Gardner Minshew or Marcus Mariota? I'm going Gardner Minshew. I'm sorry, people.
After Mariota's two showings in the two preseason games, I think it's kind of a question that doesn't even need to be answered as of right now. All right, McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We see that Andrew DeCecco from Inside the Birds, both.com and podcast, is ready to jump aboard. He's next here on Birds 365.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac here with you on Birds 365. We are joined by our buddy Andrew Jacheco from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast, who was down there at Lincoln Financial Field last night. Did you actually see anyone nod off during the playing of the game? Did you see any?
No,
to the left, fade to the right.
The reason why that would never be possible, Jody, is because I sit next to Jeff Kerr and he doesn't stop talking.
Oh man,
that's true.
That's do you actually? It's a good thing you don't pay for the seat, but you could have filed for a refund if you got to sit next to Kerr during the game.
I need that. I need to sit next to John, and John's the voice of reason there.
Well, you can get bowling tips from Jeff Kerr, though, so just take advantage of it. Yeah,
take advantage of it.
All right, we'll start with what we're talking about, Andrew. On a scale to 0 to, oh my God, where are you with Marcus Mariota as the backup quarterback of this team?
Well, going into yesterday, John, I thought it was sort of an overreaction. You wanted to see. I always said, let's see what happens in game 2. Yeah. But it was very apparent early on that he just doesn't have it. And if last season was any indication, his skills were waning. I never thought I'd say that Gardner Minshew would be a better option. But, I mean, when you look at what they had last season, I think that you'd rather take Gardner Minshew than Marcus Mariota. If you needed a quarterback to step in and play a game, get you through a game, get you through multiple games, I don't know that Marcus Mariota has proven that he can do that. It kind of my whole theory about him being new into a franchise and getting a handful of snaps and having a day off and having a handful of snaps then having the day off. Well, Tanner McKee's been able to transition just fine. So I think it's more of a byproduct of Marcus Mariota being on the tail end of his career and not having a whole lot left.
All right, so then let's jettison ahead to Thursday night, a week from last night. Last exhibition game against the Colts. You get your joint practices during the week. And I know that could affect the way Thursday night is handled, but how much does Mariota play? If you truly believe he's the backup, unquestioned, he's a veteran, he's been there, done that. Tanner McKee, no experience. We're not going to him if Hurts goes down. Do you put him out there, or do you put the deference tag on him and not play him? How is Sirianni going to handle his quarterbacks on Thursday against the Colts?
Well, even given the reps that I saw him get on Tuesday, I was kind of surprised to see him play as long as he did, Jody, to be honest with you, the other last night. Mm-hmm. I thought you'd see a heavy dose of Tanner McKee and also some Ian Book sprinkled in. All that being said, I would really be surprised if you see Marcus Mariota play next week, especially if you're taking what Nick Sirianni said yesterday at face value. Ian Book didn't take a single snap, didn't see any work in the joint practices. I think that those last preseason games are they're for guys just like Ian Book to sort of take those snaps, utilize it as film to take to other teams and showcase what you're able to do. I would be surprised if Marcus Mariota is your 2. I don't know that you would see him on next Thursday.
Boy, I forgot about Ian. Boy, next Thursday's not going to be fun.
That might be 4 hours.
Yeah. Hopefully there aren't as many injuries, and that was a concern. I mean, let's be honest. The Eagles don't care about winning these games, lose, draw, as it was. But to get 6 injuries, and it certainly looked like Zach McPherson was a significant one. And if it turns out to be that, they just lost their best 2 special teams players back-to-back weeks. And this was not a very good special teams team. Is that an underrated concern of yours for this Eagles team?
Oh, absolutely. That's not something that's going to garner headlines, and it kind of gets lost in the shuffle when you're watching a game, John. But special teams, these are core members that you obviously lost Sean Bradley for the season with an Achilles injury. We'll see about Zach McPherson, but those are 2 guys that were sort of the nucleus, I guess you could say, for that unit. So depending on the severity of McPherson's injury, that's a lot more crucial than what it appears to be on the surface. Provides inside-outside versatility at corner, one of the top young gunners in the NFL. And
now he's returning punts.
Punt returner. Yeah. And I thought he was really starting to come into his own. Looked a lot more comfortable when you put him on the inside, which is where I thought he fit best coming out of the draft. It was a shame. He made a nice play. He came down awkwardly, and it did not look good.
All right. Speaking of punting, Ty Zentner.
Oh, yeah.
Did he hit a good one all night? For me, he was 0 for 5. That's not good. He got 5 punts, and he had a chance to boom at least one. Open some eyes with one. He did he have any ball travel 50 yards?
Well, depending on who you asked, Jody, he was already on the 53-man roster before training camp even happened. Yeah. But Aaron Siposs was always the incumbent, and he was always going to have to do a lot to unseat Siposs. And I think that last night really solidified that Aaron's going to remain going into next season.
Or TBD. But I know Aaron Siposs might be the Eagles punter. TBD might be the Eagles punter. Ty Zentner will not be the Eagles punter. That's what I'm going down that route. Although, I will give this 39.8 net average, which is terrible in this era of the NFL, but 38.8 net. So he's kicking it short, but no returns. I guess you can give him that if you want to say things in a positive direction.
I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, if you're Ty Zentner, you could kind of bring that to an interview and have that on a resume.
They did not bring one back to the house.
Yeah,
there was absolutely no touchdown scored on any of the Eagles punts. If that's going to decide the job, it's not. So be it for Ty Zentner.
Yeah, so many of these, by the way, Andrew, so many of these competition battles that we thought we were going to see, we haven't seen. Cam Jurgens at right guard with Tyler Steen. Nothing. No competition.
Wait, hold on. Oh, wait. I got to jump in here for either you two guys. Did Nick Sirianni even dare to say last night that the right guard position hasn't been decided yet after the game? He didn't go there, did he?
No. He wasn't even asked because everybody knows now. And again,
I would ask them just to pimp him. Because he refuses to answer the question when it's obvious, as Beef Jerky is standing there in civvies on the sideline. Yeah. Oh, we still haven't decided who the right guard is. Please.
I always tell you, Jody, it's very competitive. You can't waste the question. If you waste the question, you're gone, man.
You're right.
Out the door.
You're right. I know where you come from. You're right.
Now, John, one thing I noticed this morning, I wanted to hear your input on this. Given that 2 crucial members of Michael Clay's unit are down right now, Ben Van Sumer and the linebacker led the team with 24 special team snaps.
Yeah.
Mekhi Garner's played a lot on that unit as well. Do you think either of those guys have a realistic opportunity to kind of seize one of those spots now that maybe we're on the outside looking in?
I think Mackay, I mentioned that last week because people were excited about Eli Ricks making the pick six. And I said, hey, you know what? Mackay Gardner making a play on special teams, especially when Sean Bradley got hurt, was a bigger deal for the Eagles because they're going to have to replace a core special teamer. So, yeah, I mean, those two injuries opened the door for a host of players, Ben being one of them, because he's very athletic. And that translates, maybe it'll take a while at linebacker, but that translates well to special teams. So, yeah, that opens the door for a bunch of guys. But Mackay seems to be a good special teams player. Ben seems to be a good special teams player. I haven't seen that from players like Ricks, and if you want to go even Mario Goodrich or somebody like that. But I think Goodrich has played well in the slot. So, but they need special teams players. And it's not sexy. Nobody likes to talk about it, but they need guys who can cover kicks.
Yeah, Tyree Cleveland actually is a big
Tyree's
loss
good at it. Yeah,
because he could have been a gunner for you,
Yeah.
and he's played a ton of snaps with the Broncos, and he was viewed as a core special teamer. So
yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. And I think that's going to be not a long-term injury. So I think Tyree, I'm glad you brought him up because he's a good special teams player, and that will certainly help him make the roster. And now there's a little bit more room than there was before. So, yeah, good point, Andrew.
They've I thought that the roster construction from last night got more muddled than defined because the young cornerbacks that we all see flashes of and kind of like who they going to have in the practice squad, who they got to cut. None of them really jumped out. Zach was the only one. And oh, by the way, he looked bad early. He got 2 passes completed on him early and then turned it around and started playing real well. None of those guys jumped up as must-have DBs and or special teams contributor for me last night. For you, Andrew?
Not particularly. That was actually a point of emphasis for me yesterday, Jody, to focus on the young defensive backs.
Right.
I really like what I've seen from Mario Goodrich from a slot perspective. He was on the opening kickoff for whatever that's worth. I think right now the door is ajar for him to potentially get one of those spots. But I mean, Eli Ricks struggled in coverage yesterday. He fell down on a 32-yard touchdown to Austin Watkins. I think Mackay Gardner. Ringo had a really rough game, John.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, I don't even know. I mean, I don't think that he can step in and give you snaps at all at least early in the regular season.
No,
So he's a long ways to go. Mackay Gardner has flashed. I just don't know where his future lies. Is he going to be a safety? He kind of reminds me a little bit of I don't know whether it's the number or his size of a young Kaiser White, because Kaiser White was a converted safety. There's a number of young guys, but nobody really stepped up. I mean, Zach McPherson and Josh Jobe opened the game as starters, and those guys really had their spots stamped on the roster. But as far as young guys jumping up and really snagging one of those spots, Jody, I didn't really see it.
Would you say that Zach Cunningham, as of right now, and I don't, again, when's it going to change? The practice against the Colts, the game against the Colts? Right now, it seems pretty obvious to me that Zach Cunningham should be the other starting linebacker across from Nakobe Dean. Any disagreement?
No. I think that one to me is sort of that's starting to come into focus, right? I think as we get later towards the end of August, I think it's apparent to me, at least, that Zach Cunningham would be the starter right now opposite Nakobe Dean. Long player, physical player, he's logged a ton of snaps in the NFL, gets his hand on a lot of footballs. He has the length to disrupt the passing lanes, and you've seen it already. He's gotten his hand up. John knows he's affected. He pretty much was the reason why Reed Blankenship got the interception the other day, which led to the little melee in practice. But I think that he's just the type of player that kind of reminds me of a TJ Edwards-esque player that the Eagles can have in the second level of that team to sort of solidify that and provide a physical element.
Third tight end has been interesting for me because I expected more from Dan Arnold. We haven't really seen it throughout training camp. I think he had a good spring, but I don't think he's stood out. We finally got to get that Tyree Jackson sort of splash where you see the athleticism and just this physical ability. But I think it's going to be chalk. I think it's going to be Goddard, Stoll, Calcaterra. And you see anything different, Andrew?
Yeah, John, that's kind of how I had it going into camp. I thought that it was going to be between Dan Arnold and Grant Calcaterra. Ultimately, throughout the summer, they both offer next to nothing as a blocker, but they are noted receivers, right? So I think when you look at someone like Dan Arnold, he's a journeyman. I think he's been on 5 or 6 teams. They've invested draft capital. Granted, it was a 6th-round pick in Grant Calcaterra, but I think all things equal, you're going to be partial to the guy you drafted that you have a year of development and invested in and give him the benefit of the doubt and kind of want to see that through. And I think that while no one's really stepped up and really caught my eye, I think that Grant Calcaterra would probably be the 3 right now.
As good as Devontae Smith is, who, oh, by the way, Darius Slay said the other day, could be the best wide receiver in the National Football League at some point in his career. That's pretty high praise. We all watched what A.J. Brown did last year, and if the Eagles don't have him, they don't go to the Super Bowl. The guy on the team with the best hands is still Greg Ward. If you throw it to him, he catches it. Never drops the football. All right, he doesn't break tackles. He doesn't get downfield the way A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith does. But, damn it, every time they throw him the ball, he catches it. Is he going to make the practice squad again? You know, the practice squad is supposed to be for developmental. Well, Ward is what he is. He's not developing, not getting any better, but he is, for me, the best hands on the team. Does that merit him a practice squad spot again this year?
You know, I'm really glad you brought up Greg Ward. I've been a big Greg Ward guy since 2017. I mean, I thought that his transition from quarterback to wide receiver was pretty seamless. He was on the practice squad. He won a Super Bowl ring as a rookie. He does so many things well, Jody. He catches the ball well. He is really good at working the short to intermediate areas, finding the soft spots in zone, taking hits over the middle. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have the speed, but he's a reliable player. And an underrated aspect of his game is that he is a really good leader. Guys respect him. He leads by example. He's a quiet guy. He does a lot of things that people don't realize. In the practice squad, he was emulating the Niners wide receivers before the NFC Championship game. In the Super Bowl, he was Edelman, he was Amendola, and giving the starters those different looks. And I just think that he's a valuable guy that you would like to have around. And I think you have to carve out a spot for him because I think he would help any young receiver and just a good guy to have in the building.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous leader. It's kind of amazing the way Greg Ward has developed into this organization. You know, we've talked a lot about the negative play, the poor play. The best part of this Eagles team to me, and there's a lot good. The quarterback is tremendous. The receivers, Jody just talked about at the top end, certainly with AJ and Devontae. The tight end is phenomenal. The starting offensive line is good. A little bit concerned with the depth this year. But that defensive front, man, I mean, and I'm talking edge players and interiors. How many defensive front people are you keeping on this team? Because, I mean, they have like 15 or 16 NFL players.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Off the top of my head, maybe 11. Like there's gonna be some really good guys that shake free. I mean, Janoris Robinson. You and I talked about him last night. I spoke to him after the game. I thought he really flashed. Under ordinary circumstances, he probably makes the team at one of those final spots. He's really athletic, 86 and a quarter inch wingspan, Florida State pedigree. They held him on the roster all last season without playing him in any single game. So they obviously like him, John, but there's no room for him.
There's no room.
There's no room. I mean, Moro Ojomo's injury, and we'll have to wait and see what that did not look good. And you feel for the kid, but maybe that opens the door for a Marlon Tuipulotu, who I kind of thought was already on, or maybe Kentavious Street, because before the injury, I didn't think Contavious Street had a shot, and that's a veteran player that I thought
he played well yesterday.
Right. So that right there tells you how deep they are, and I just think that there's going to be some NFL caliber players that don't make it and end up somewhere else, and maybe provide some snaps.
All right, last one for me, Andrew, and this is going to be difficult. A who says no question. Howie Roseman, Andrew Berry. Whoever puts the call in, one calls the other, and the offer is Austin Watkins for Quez Watkins. Who says no?
Andrew Berry.
Andrew says no after the big Austin Watkins showing last night.
You know, here's the thing. He's a young player.
Got a ton of traffic, by the way. How many targets did he? 14 targets.
They just kept throwing him the football.
He's a young player, Jody, and I think sometimes that there's an allure there, and he's moldable. So he doesn't necessarily, he might not have some of those bad habits.
Well, see, now you screwed the pooch.
You're talking about elite.
I was going to give you a free pass on that one, but now I got to put you to the test. Tell me where else Mr. Watkins has played. Since you don't know, I'll tell you. 49ers, Tampa Bay,
awesome.
The Memphis Showboats, the Birmingham Stallions, and the Ottawa Rough Riders, or Saskatchewan Rough Riders, excuse me. This guy's been all over the world. He's not that old. He's young.
You need
is he young or is he old? I don't know. He's played for like 72 different teams,
Yeah.
including the Blazers of UAB, that high-level college football talent that he was.
He's 25, by the way.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, Quez is missing valuable time right now. There's no way around that. The Eagles obviously really like Quez. They've Nick Sirianni has doubled down on his support for Quez throughout the offseason. But at the same time, I mean, when you already had a tentative footing on the depth chart, I mean, I think he's gonna be on the roster. But
I'm in the category, Andrew, where Quez is getting too much crap because well, two things. I'm just looking up Austin Watkins. So Jody pointed out the fact that, he's been around for 2 years and he's already got 6 organizations on his resume. He ran a 4.53. Howie's the one hanging up that bone. Anytime you can run. Now, Quez put himself in the hot water for calling himself elite. That's absurd. But, I mean, he's an NFL receiver. He had a bad year, but I think people are too harsh on Quez Watkins. And I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. As long as he's not going to get a lot of traffic. And by the way, he played through an injury last year, which people didn't know about as well. As long as he makes the plays that are there, he didn't make them last year, and he deserves to be criticized for it because he was out there, injury or not, he was out there. And if you're out there, you got to make the plays, certainly in the Super Bowl. I don't think he's a terrible player. Am I crazy with Quez?
No, but I think that he's kind of unfairly come under the microscope because they've been really effusive in their praise of Quez, but then Quez didn't help himself by, like you said, calling himself elite. So I think when you do that, you put yourself under the microscope and you leave little room for error there. But I mean, come on, John. Austin Watkins beat the great Eli Ricks for 32 yards.
That's true.
Are you still sure?
Yeah, I forgot about that. You got to put that because, Eli Ricks was he was getting a gold jacket from some fans.
And he just Watkins just sashay around them into the end zone, man.
Yeah.
Hey,
it's a good point.
Watkins may not make the Browns. Kaylee Ringo's going to make the Eagles, and last night it was who's going to grab the football. At least Watkins knew where it was. Ringo had no bloody idea on that throw down the sidelines.
And I think it was great. He was on the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, the Memphis Showboats, and the Birmingham Stallions. 3 legendary minor league organizations
he's
already.
Been around. But John says they're sticking with Quez because he runs a 4.32 rather than a 4.59.
Oh, they're totally staying with Quez. Austin Watkins would never be the number 3 on this team anyway.
Yeah.
Andrew, great stuff. Appreciate you jumping on board with us. We're going to have you on plenty during the season. Check out all his work at InsideTheBirds.com, both the podcast and their tremendous website. Thanks for jumping in today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Big guy.
Great talking to you guys. Take care.
Hey,
Our
Jody, because you sent me down this wormhole, and I know you got to go, but real quick, Austin Watkins is the cousin of Sammy Watkins and Jalen Watkins.
No relation to Quez, though.
No.
Quez is an outsider. He's
Outsider.
a Watkins on his own,
fan.
huh?
Yeah.
All right, so he's got some. They got football in the blood. That's my point. I don't know if that's showing last night. I think Andrew Berry's phone is ringing off the hook. People inquiring about Mr. Watkins. I'd never heard of the guy before last night. I'm going, who? Quez? What? Who the hell is Austin Watkins? But a
lot of traffic last night. A lot of traffic.
With both quarterbacks, even when they changed quarterbacks, they just kept throwing to him. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. Throw it to Watkins.
By the way, Cleveland sat far more players than the Eagles, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
anyway, I was at least glad to see that they decided to play their middle linebacker because I feared that
he made a play. He made a play.
He made a play. Took one penalty, but then made a play on top of it, which, correct me if I'm wrong, John, and I know how big an Edwards fan both you and I are.
Oh, I got that a lot. That N'Kobe forced a fumble and TJ didn't. I got that from a bunch of fans.
Yeah.
I will just remind you again, that was not Nick Chubb. That was John Kelly. If that's Nick Chubb, that ball's not coming out. A good play. I think the more impressive part of the play was his ability to diagnose and knife in there, which would have been a tackle for a loss. But that's a bad fumble. That a big time running back isn't fumbling that football. So
understood. But you take it anyway and get your hands on it when you haven't seen N'Kobe do all that much this preseason, and you know that he's going to be their starting middle linebacker. You take a play anyway and get your hands on the play, and he did. Make a play, but you agree. I'm pretty sure that we all agree on Cunningham's job to lose as of right now for the other starting linebacker.
Yeah. I thought he was great. I thought he played really well, and he was even better in the joint practices. So to me, it's between Zach Cunningham and Christian Ellis. I think they distanced themselves from Nick Morrow, and that's a positive because I said from the day they signed him, but I was talking about Zach in Houston. He was a very good player. I didn't know how much he had left.
Tennessee gave him a big contract.
Yeah, he was a very good player. Yeah. And looks like he's got something left. That might turn out to be a really solid move for the Eagles.
Last question, and then I got to run. Johnny Mack will come back. He and our buddy Zander will wrap up the show for you. We've been debating all off season about how Sean Desai's defense is going to look compared to Jonathan Gannon's defense. And you say that he is taking his marching orders from the head coach, that it's all about the concepts of Nick Sirianni and don't get too far afield because the coach will be calling you into his office. Last year, they used two linebackers. They stayed on the field all season long. A lot of it, of course, has to do with not getting hurt, but they played well. And I bemoan the fact that the now starting middle linebacker got all of 32 snaps last year and criticized Nick Rallis for not doing a little bit more subbing. You think they want to handle it the same way this year?
I think they want to, yeah. But, when they signed those two guys, Jack, in Cunningham, I thought, you remember I said they might piecemeal it because I think Zach is the better run defender. Miles is the better pass defender, but Zach is the better run defender and the better pass defender. So, if you don't have to take him off the field, you don't need to take him off the field. In the case with N'Kobe, they want him to be TJ, never leave the field. But that deals with durability, and we'll see from that. But you want two guys, and that was part of the success of the Eagles. Everybody stayed healthy. So many guys stayed healthy and played the entire season. That's rare. So,
and the key guys from this year's Eagle teams all stayed healthy last night because they didn't play.
Yeah.
But a whole bunch of other guys did, and we're going to have to deal with those injuries. John will get some more info for you over the entire process next week, joint practice, final exhibition game as we head to the start of the season. J-Mac, I'll see you next week. All right, brother?
All right. Thanks, Jody. Appreciate it.
Coming back here next, Birds 365. Johnny Mac and Zander K will wrap up this week here on Birds 365. Stay right there.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365. I'll be filling in for Jody Mack to close out the show. John, a couple things I want to discuss with you before we get out of here and have a weekend. One is running backs, and two is Nakobe Dean. So we'll start on whatever one you want to start on. I thought we'll start our running back. I thought it was interesting. Kenny Gainwell suited up last night. Everybody was, talking about in the game one. He didn't suit up, so he was running back one. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings on him and Trey Sermon. What's your breakdown of the running back room as we get closer to the season here?
Yeah, I was talking about it with Damo. Damo likes the room certainly more than me. I don't like the uncertainty aspect of it. In the fact that we don't know how they're going to approach it. And it's, August 18th, and we're still wondering. Yesterday it was DeAndre Swift getting the deference. And you remember back to Baltimore, we all assumed, all right, Kenny's not playing. He's the guy. He's gotten most of the reps in training camp with the ones. And, Nick said, no, not necessarily. It's about, he wants the running backs to get tackled because it's a more physical position. And he was true to his word. Kenny was active. DeAndre wasn't. Boston was active. He wasn't active in Baltimore. But Rashad Penny was active in both. he kind of insinuated that Rashad would sit as well in this game against the Cleveland Browns. He did not. And then you have Trey Sermon, who got most of the work, and there was some good and some bad. Damo mentioned the blitz pickup, which wasn't good. He fumbled, which obviously wasn't good. But you know what? That was a 15-yard reception before the fumble, so he showed some juice, and then he had the long touchdown run. So uncertainty. But the two guys you absolutely know are going to be a big part of it are Swift and Gainwell. It kind of depends on, it seems like Kenny Gainwell's going to be what the guy in what I call the high leverage situations, hurry up, red zone, backed up. You saw backed up and it didn't work, but that was more of Josh Sills missing a block on the backside. There's not much Kenny can do about that, but those are the two guys are going to be a big part of the offense, I would say, is Kenny Gainwell and DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, and where does Boston Scott fall into it? Is he kind of the default 4 and Penny and Sermon are fighting for 3?
I think so, yeah. I think that's exactly it. And one of the things, because I said, Trey Sermon was the kick returner yesterday as well. I said, if you can get somebody to take over that job, maybe you can move on from Boston Scott. But he was a team captain last night, and that's meaningful. Even though obviously it's a game where most of the regular captains are sitting, not most, all. The fact that they put him out there and the other guys as well, it means something for Derek Barnett. It means something for Josh Jobe. They're keeping Boston. So, yeah, Trey Sermon's got to beat out Rashad Penny for that third spot.
And how much does the factor of Trey Sermon is a younger player with less mileage? I think he's under contract through next season as well, versus Rashad Penny, who's kind of, beaten down. He's got a lot of injury history. He's an older player, maybe a more established player, but there's not as much upside there. How much do you think will factor in?
I do think it comes into it. And I think it comes into it like how much are they going to use Rashad Penny? I've always said he's a guy who could be, the Anthony Harris of this year, for lack of a better, he could be a starter or he could be off the roster.
Right.
And I still believe that. How much are they going to utilize them? How much are they going to use them? If it's not a lot, why keep him around? He's here for 1 year, and if he plays well, let's say he turns into the lead back and he runs for 1,500 yards and he's what everybody thinks he is. He finally stays healthy. Then he's going to make too much money and they're going to get rid of him. And if he doesn't play well, they're not going to want him back. So, that factors into it. But what also factors in, we mentioned a couple times in the show, the Eagles are legit Super Bowl contenders. So, I don't want to default too much to upside. You're trying to win now. And if he's here for 1 year, he's here for 1 year, and then you move on.
Yeah, and to your point about being a legit Super Bowl contender, I think that makes the depth pieces matter more. I mean, you saw it last year, even in the Super Bowl, where special teams can be a problem, where you need good depth at special team, or good depth pieces that can play special teams, and all those things, I'm sure, go into consideration more than, maybe a team that's fighting to be competitive 1 year,
Yeah. And that's why, originally I thought, well, maybe Dan Arnold could help this team. But, if you're a 5-win, 6-win team, you're going to keep somebody like Grant Calcaterra. Now, Dan sort of hasn't performed to where he put himself in that position. But, yeah, you got to be honest with yourself. And some teams can't. Some organizations can't be honest with themselves, and that's one of their problems. With the Eagles, I mean, they're a real Super Bowl contender. So they should default on guys that could help them now versus upside guys. And you might lose a player here or there, a young player that turns into something down the road. But if somebody can help you this year and get you a win or get you a play in a big spot versus somebody who you're thinking about like is going to be something 2-3 years down the road, and that's the decision. I'm going to keep the guy that can help me now because I'm in a position to win now.
Right, makes sense. John, let's shift gears to Nakobe Dean, and I want you to put your analyst cap on. I'm not asking for a report here. I'm asking for, you've been down at the practices, you've been down at both the preseason games so far. Any concern from John McMullen on Nakobe Dean and him being the starting linebacker for the Eagles this year?
Yeah, the same thing with the running backs. I don't like uncertainty, and you can talk about Georgia all you want. I know you're an Alabama guy, and the SEC is the best. Yeah, SEC is the best conference in college football. It's not the NFL. That doesn't guarantee success. There have been a litany of good college players from the SEC that are not good pro players, starting with Tim Tebow, who might be the best college player of all time. It's not a good NFL player. I always go back to Michael Sam, who was the SEC co-defensive player of the year. Didn't have the traits to play in the NFL. Dwayne Rudd, one an Alabama guy.
Johnny Manziel, he's the talk of the news.
Well,
he's in the news
a lot of other issues with Johnny, but
but still, I mean, nonetheless, he
watching watching zero film. My point now, Nakobe's a really smart kid. It's not going to be because he's not watching film or preparing or anything like that. But there's a reason he was the Butkus Award winner and the best player on the best defense in college football, but he was a third-round pick. And what are those reasons? One is size. He's got some size issues. Two, he's not the best athlete in the world compared to some other linebackers who go near the top of the draft. And, probably the biggest one is those durability concerns.
That's what it is for me because you can talk about size with Devontae Smith, who's a wide receiver where, his skill set can kind of take over. When you're the linebacker, that's a physical position, and it's asking you to be physical a lot with a lot of
Well,
big
and that's
men
the problem because Jody brings up Devontae a lot, and the assumption that, Devontae did it. No, Devontae's an outlier. If you usually...
And it's in a different position.
Usually if you take... But even at that position, you're right, linebacker's way more physical position. But even at receiver, if you take another 166-pound guy because you think, Devontae could do it, guess what? You're going to fail. You're going to fail pretty consistently. And that's why the NFL places such high, sort of impact on measurables and traits. And they do all these studies that are... Who has success at wide receiver in the NFL? And you look for certain things. Who has success at linebacker in the NFL? And you look for certain things. That doesn't mean there aren't outliers, Devontae being one of them. But if you stray from and assume because Devontae did it that other guys can do it, you're probably going to fail more than you succeed. All right, you're muted, Zander.
Yeah, and as we're talking about the receivers, I was just going to finish up on that real quick. How's that group going to shape out after 3? I saw Olamide. He made some good plays last night. I like the prospect of him. I'm maybe biased because we went to the same high school, St. Joe's Prep, represent, but I thought he looked good. I think he has a chance to actually, make some plays where, last year it was Zach Pascal in that role where he didn't get the ball as much. I think Olamide is a playmaker type of guy. When you get him the football, he can make plays. What do you make of the receiver room and where Quez is and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think Quez is playing well, and as I mentioned, he played through an injury last year. I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think he's clearly kept his job as the so-called wide receiver 3, and Alameda will be the 4th receiver. And it's kind of different. I mean, yeah, he's a way bigger playmaker than Zach Pascal, but Zach Pascal did a lot of the dirty work that when it comes to blocking and things that aren't that exciting. But it was a nice luxury to have. Um, so you have a different type as the 4th receiver. Alameda is a way better receiver than Zach Pascal, but he
Right.
can't do that dirty work. So you kind of got to go about it a different way. And then Britton Covey is the punt returner, and they might try to play some roster games with him because he's been hurt, and that's what they did last year. They got him through waivers. Um, they elevated him for the first 3 games, then they put him on the roster. I don't think they're going to do that. But if they love somebody, that's the problem. Like, if you're going to try to play that game and risk losing him on waivers, what are you doing it for? To me, the best of the bottom level of receivers has been Tyree Cleveland. Now he's hurt, so we'll see how that shakes out. Fans have latched on to Joseph Nada because I think people have talked about him, some reporters. To me, he doesn't get the separation consistently, and that was the knock on him coming out of Clemson. Really
But how
big
about the
guy.
dirty work? Is he a guy that can? I mean,
Yeah,
you
he
just
could be a
pointed
Zach
out,
Pascal type.
that Alameda can't do that. Quez Watkins is obviously not that
Yeah.
guy. Is Nada that guy?
But maybe he is after he learns, but you can get him on the practice squad. Maybe he is 2-3 years down the road, but I don't think he's ready right now. And I think it's pretty easy to get him on the practice squad. So that factors into it as well. Because there'll be 2 or 3 receivers on the practice squad. And I don't think you have to worry about getting him through waivers. A lot of fans, and this happens every year, they forget you don't lose too many people on waivers. The Eagles are one of the best teams in
Yeah,
football.
right.
They might lose 2 or 3 players, and if you look at the Eagles, worry about the defensive line. Don't worry about receivers. Because after AJ and Devontae, there's a pretty sharp drop off.
John, you've got a couple minutes left in the show. I just want you to have a chance to give your finishing touches on what you thought of the game last night. I know they don't mean as much as maybe we would like them to mean, but what just maybe anything else you took away from it? I know we talked a lot about on the show today about Marcus Mariota and Tanner McKee, and we just kind of broke down the linebackers, the running backs, and a little bit of wide receiver. Just anything else that stood out to you in the game that you kept your eye on?
I mentioned the special teams aspect. I think Zach McPherson's injury is going to be significant. It's just a matter of how significant. And that's back-to-back weeks. You lost 2 core special teamers. So that's not sexy, but that's going to be an issue to try to replace Sean Bradley and Zach McPherson on special teams. Marcus Mariota's got to pick it up as the backup quarterback. From a positive perspective, Zach Cunningham, I think, is the biggest positive because I think the Eagles found their second linebacker. I think he's got juice left. He's got gas left in the tank, and I think he's a good player, and people are going to see that.
Cunningham in, and I guess that means Nick Morrow out.
Probably, but those, he can play special teams as well, and those that opened up. Sean's going to be out for the season. That's already confirmed.
Oh right. Yeah.
I hope Zach is not going to be out for the season, but they might have to keep if he's not. If say it's an 8-week injury, just for sake of argument. They'll have to keep him on the 53 initially and then immediately put him on injured reserve so they can bring him back. So you have to do some juggling. But those 2 injuries open up 2 roster spots. So there's opportunities for guys like Nick Morrow there's opportunities for guys that can excel on special teams to now make the roster.
Yeah, and I think it matters. I mean, we just said it a little bit earlier. This is a Super Bowl contending team, so as much as some people might not think maybe 52 and 53 on the roster matter, I think they certainly do. Especially, you saw special teams was a a negative for the Eagles last year. So, and they're contending again. I think every spot matters, and how they fill it will be. They'll focus on each one to try and pick the right one.
Yeah, and that's why even the little parts. I think everybody kind of overlooks special teams, and that was the worst part of this team last year. Yep. And you don't have to be top 5 or anything like that, but it'd be nice to not be bottom 5. And Nick Sirianni says that you never want to be bottom 5 in anything. And if the Eagles can get that, being a bottom 5 special teams team to being middle of the road, they'll improve this team dramatically. And the chances, everybody talks about the defensive blunders in the Super Bowl, Zander. Probably the biggest play was the punt.
Yeah,
return.
I mean, forget being top 5 special teams. Just don't give me Patrick Mahomes first and goal, to start the drive.
Exactly.
So, all right, Johnny Mac, good week this week. Back at it this weekend. The Birds are practicing. I heard you say Saturday and Sunday. And then they got Shane Steichen comes back to town next week for a joint practice and preseason game number 3. So good week this week, Johnny Mac. Enjoy your weekend. We'll catch you on the flip side. All right.
Thanks, Zander.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.